Our next guest is fulfilling a campaign promise. Virginia's newly elected Democratic Governor Abigail Spanberger won her election by 15 points 4 years after the Republican governor won by 2 points. She took the governorship away from the Republicans and has now cut the state of Virginia's ties with immigration and customs enforcement. The Washington Post reports one of her first acts after being sworn in January 17th was to issue an executive order rescinding an action by her predecessor, former Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, that required state law enforcement agencies to enter into 287G agreements with federal immigration authorities. Those agreements deputize state officials to conduct federal immigration enforcement. On Wednesday, Spanberger directed the state police as well as corrections officials and other state agencies to cancel any such agreements. And today, Governor Spanberger joined 24 Democratic state governors in condemning Donald Trump's suggestion that he would nationalize November's midterm elections. The governors wrote in a joint statement, "Voting in free and fair elections is the foundation of our democracy. All Americans deserve to have their voices heard as they exercise their right to vote without interference from the federal government. President Trump's threats to remove the ability of states to run their own elections is an undemocratic attempt to silence the American people who are rejecting his costly and divisive agenda. While Trump whines about losing a free and fair election, he's now openly talking about rigging one in the future. Democratic governors won't let that happen." Joining us now is Virginia's Democratic Governor Abigail Spanberger. Governor, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, your decision about ICE. What brought you to that decision?
Well, importantly, on my first day in office, I said that I rescinded my predecessor's executive order and stated that no longer were these relationships mandated. And then I took a full review of the existence of 287G agreements across the Commonwealth of Virginia to have a full picture of what it is that we would be walking away from. And yesterday, I issued an executive order and an executive directive. In the executive order, I first began by frankly celebrating the professionalism of Virginia law enforcement, recognizing that in Virginia, we have law enforcement that carry as their North Star a commitment to professionalism and building up community trust, because it is essential to the ability to do good policing, to protect people, to investigate crimes, to uphold justice and the Constitution, both of the country and our Commonwealth. And what I found is that in looking at the 287G requirements, they explicitly say that law enforcement under those agreements can be under the supervision, quote, under the direction and supervision of ICE. And given the level of professionalism, vetting, training, and the standards that we hold dear here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I want Virginia law enforcement, Virginia State Police, Virginia Department of Corrections, I want them operating under the leadership of their own agencies. And so I issued that executive directive ending 287G agreements. Now, to be very clear, if anyone, a federal agency, comes to Virginia law enforcement with a signed judicial warrant, Virginia law enforcement will continue to cooperate to uphold the law as they have been doing and as is expected. But no longer will they be under the direction or supervision of other agencies per a 287G agreement.
What are you going to do if Tulsi Gabbard shows up with a warrant issued by a federal judge in Missouri who's never been to Virginia to seize ballot boxes from the state of Virginia?
Well, then now that's something separate from the 287G issue. I mean, and I had to take a deep breath for a moment as we think about a president who is saying that they want to essentially federalize elections, take control of elections. It runs in the face of even just the basic principles of our country. States run elections. That's how it works. And we have a president who has recognized that he is not going to win either of these midterms in 2026. or see any success for his party in 2028. And so he's getting desperate. And what is the real tragedy in this is that I would like to see not just Democratic governors saying that a president saying he's going to overtake elections and seize control. It shouldn't just be Democratic governors who are standing up and saying that that is wrong and that is unconstitutional. It should be every governor in every state across the country.
But I think we know that he's only going to do this in states that have Democratic governors.
Well, we are here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, certainly ensuring that we have are digging into every potential option and understanding of how it is that we execute our elections. In Virginia, notably, we have 45 days of early voting, which is certainly a benefit to the voter, space to time out, go and vote in person or vote by mail. And so while that gives many more opportunities to a voter, it also gives, many more days of early voting for us to contend with ensuring that we are protecting access to the ballot box. It's essential here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so we are looking at every legal angle to make sure that we are protecting what is the right of the Commonwealth of Virginia and other states to run our elections in accordance with federal and state law and ensure that every eligible voter is able to cast their ballot. That is what, as governor, I am going to ensure that we are doing here on the ground. But the fact that it is even up for discussion is yet one more outrage that comes from a president who continues to be absolutely lawless.
Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, I think your election scared Donald Trump with that 15-point margin more than anyone else's. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
That's the highest compliment. Thank you very, very much, Lawrence.